Today I have a video that's a little bit different. I'm going to go over a presentation I'm doing for my chemistry lab, and it's on food dyes. If you're a parent, this is something you should definitely tune into because we're going to talk about foods and how it relates to children, especially the dye, preservatives, and later on we'll get into a little bit of the sugar too. So getting into it, we basically did a chemistry experiment in chem lab where we titrated and then looked at the concentration of the wavelength of different food dyes. We did yellow and red, and most of my report was centered around the red food dyes. But you'll see when we get to some of the foods, there's a bunch of different dyes, yellow, red, blue, green, and they're in just about everything that kids will eat and drink. A great example, you can see this kid here. Most of these are Kool-Aid because I thought it was funny. Kool-Aid is kind of one of those staples of being a kid. I don't know about these days, but back in the day, that's what we drank a lot of. So it was something that I really liked a lot of the pictures that were up. So that's what you're going to see a lot of. So let's get into the start of it. Now, before we get into this, just to let you know, I know there's going to be immediately concerns about like whether the dye is actually causing a lot of the things that these studies talk about. I too have those concerns. People I've talked about have those concerns. I will address that later. But yes, there's sugar in a lot of these. So this could also lead to hyperactivity. So when I talk about this, don't think that I don't, understand where you're coming from if that's what your thoughts are too. We'll talk about that later. So in 2005, a sample of 1,873 children were tested for the presence of hyperactivity at baseline. So they did a baseline assessment, just how they were normally. The goal was to determine whether artificial food colorings and preservatives in the diet of the 4-year-old children and the general population influenced hyperactivity and behavior. So what they were looking at is to see if the dye had a correlation to how these children acted. So the testing methods. Let me move this over, make myself smaller. There we go. Sorry. It's kind of hard to screen record if you've never done it before. Alright, so the testing methods, they tested a baseline assessment, so just how they were normal. They did 1 week of a diet eliminating artificial colorings and benzoate preservative. Now, don't know a whole lot about that. I wish I did for this presentation, but we weren't really testing that, so I haven't done a whole lot of research behind it. But just think about this. Your dyes and your preservatives are going to go hand in hand, and also I would say dyes, sugar, and preservatives go hand in hand, so you're really not going to get one without the others. So, something to consider. 3 weeks of a random double-blind study of artificial coloring, 20 milligrams daily, and sodium benzoate 45 milligrams daily, or placebo. So basically they were looking at all the factors, and no one, neither the tester nor the people being tested or the kids being tested, knew what the difference was. I have no clue how they did this because I would think that you would definitely notice if something was colored, but maybe I don't know, maybe they had like non-clear bottles or something, I don't know. And I also kind of wonder because wouldn't you end up with some sort of dye on your face like these kids? I don't know. Anyways, just questions I have and I don't have answers for. Alright, so the findings. There was significant reduction in hyperactive behavior during the withdrawal phase. So what they were saying is that when the kids were abstaining from having dye in their diet at all, they noticed a big difference in their hyperactivity. Now, that's not just with this study. Later on, I'm going to cite a resource where they looked at 33, from the FDA actually. So they looked at 33 different studies over a long period of time and basically came to the same conclusion. So it's not just from this one, but the references are down here, and I will put the link in the description, links in the description, so you can go to these places and check it out for yourself. So there was significantly greater increases in the hyperactive behavior during the active than the placebo period based on parental reports. So this is coming from the parents. Don't know how I feel about that. That doesn't really seem very scientific, but I guess you're going to know your kids as a parent. Okay, so Purdue University, from my home state of Indiana, I went to college at Ball State, in case you didn't know, and Purdue University has been doing some interesting studies. This is not the only one. I actually looked at another one and have a PDF downloaded where they looked at just kind of the different foods in general, and it wasn't related to kids, and it's crazy to see some of the stuff they've got on here. So we're looking at stuff that kids eat, right? And so General Mills Trix cereal, you know it's got food coloring. It's got yellow 6, blue 1, and red 40, 36.4 milligrams per serving. So these are based on the servings. That's a lot. So a lot of coloring there. Fruity Cheerios, red 40, yellow 6, blue 1, 31 milligrams. One of the highest cereals that they tested was Captain Crunch Oops All Berries. So it was like super, super sugary, just all the berries. Red 40, yellow 6, blue 1, 41 milligrams. The reason why I put Kool-Aid up, not only because it reminds me of my childhood, but it is one of the highest drinks on there. It actually, out of the ones they tested, it was the highest. So 52 milligrams of red dye 40. That is a lot. We tested, it's not on here because it's up in where some of the other people in my group are working on, but we tested Code Red Mountain Dew, and per serving Code Red Mountain Dew, per bottle, Code Red Mountain Dew has 60. This is per serving. I wonder how many packets that is. That's a lot. Your kids are getting a lot. And so a normal baseline, I don't think I have this on the slides, but when I was looking in the report, a normal baseline is around 100 milligrams per day for most kids. But this is something to look at too here in case you can't see it. Food dyes certified for use by the Food and Drug Administration have increased fivefold per capita between 1950 and 2012. So, fivefold. That's a lot. It is a money-making business. And, I'm not going to go on a tangent, but some of the other ones that I didn't know was Kraft macaroni and cheese. Now, when I looked this up, the crazy thing was they got a huge pushback from parents, and I guess they signed a huge petition, and they're now making a Kraft macaroni and cheese without the yellow dye in it. They're going to use like paprika or something to dye things. And just to let you know, when you start looking at this stuff, it is like a rabbit hole you can't get out of. I was on this this research connection last night for 4 hours, and I was way beyond what I needed for this report. So there's so much information about it, and it was very interesting, very cool. If you like to geek out on this stuff, Skittles and M&Ms, 33 and 29 respectively. So basically, a lot of food coloring in those little bags of M&Ms and Skittles. I do love my M&Ms though, very good. Peanut butter though, not regular. Anyways, moving on. They're not healthy for you. Oh, there we go. So, the FDA, if you want to check this out, again, I'll put the link in the description below, has a huge PowerPoint on stuff they've researched. That is the study I was talking about, that they looked at 33 different, I wouldn't call it a study, it was like an analyzing of 33 different studies. And basically look at everything, and to see if they think that there's a reason that dye is actually causing the things that these reports are showing. So, again, we need to ask ourselves, is it sugar or is it preservatives? In my opinion, it's hard to get away from either one without looking at the other. Because they think there's a neuro component to this, so it affects the brain in some individuals. Again, it's going to talk about it here in a second, but individual. So on an individual basis, it may not affect me, but it might affect you. It's hard to say. But we do know that sugar definitely causes hyperactivity. It definitely causes a lot of disease. It's one of the things that we've really got to look at from a diet perspective and figure out a way to eat less of it. So whether it is the preservatives or the sugar or the dye that's causing a lot of the symptoms that they're talking about, we need to look at all of them, and these studies are particularly focused on the dye. So children with ADHD or other problem behaviors may exhibit a unique intolerance to a variety of foods or food components, including but not limited to artificial coloring. So it's basically saying that it could be other foods, but it may be the actual additives. um, are the potential behavior effects caused by one particular color or food item by the combined action of multiple food items? So again, or by interaction, perhaps synergistically with components in the food. That goes back to this. So sugar and preservatives, other things, other dyes in the food, you got to consider that. More hyperactive children react to color change than normal children, and this is actually from a study. Possibly genetic predisposition for hyperactivity and sensitivity to food colors. So again, based on individuals, some people with the ADHD were more responding to the dyes than normal. Shouldn't say normal children, but children without it. So it's kind of interesting, and I could go on a whole tangent because if you haven't watched the movie Take Your Pills, awesome Netflix documentary, and I think that's again one of those things, like maybe cleaning up the food would prevent some of the problems that kids have with ADHD, so instead of giving them pills. Current FDA regulatory label requirements mandate listing certified color additives by name on food label, thus providing information to identify ingredients and enable personal avoidance. So yeah, this stuff's on your food labels. It's completely possible to avoid it, but not really. You're going to have a hard time getting away from food coloring. If you look at other parts of the world and European countries, they don't allow this kind of stuff. And I think that's why the FDA is getting a hard push to kind of look at this and analyze it. So if you have any questions or if this sparks some conversation that you want to have, feel free to leave some comments below. I didn't put this out there to demonize anything. I just put it out there because we're doing a report on it. It was my research connection to what we're doing, and this actually helps me get ready for a presentation tomorrow. So I look forward to it. Back to exercise tutorials. We're not going to do a whole lot of this stuff. I just wanted to get up and show you some cool stuff that I've been working on. So with that in mind, thank you for watching. Peace.